I was socialized into hating Jews. I used to hate them. I used to think they were monsters. Let me start with how you end by saying, please do not think that this is another fad that will pass. I think it would be a lethal mistake for all of us to do it.
Is there room for compromise between principles?
If I want to kill you and behead you, unless you convert to the religion I dictate, what would be the place of compromise?
You talk about how we've cleared or softened Christianity of its hard edges. I just wanted you to expand on that. And since we've had so many lectures, well, 2 lectures about the Antichrist, is it about we've lost this powerful narrative and now we've lost our way and a new narrative has come in to shape everything?
I think everything is relational. And if you compare the conviction displayed by the Islamists in terms of their faith in Islam and the foundational documents and the man who founded Islam, Muhammad, and you ask yourself, can we offset that with an alien creed that is coming in? We can't. We've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We have said that it was possible after the Enlightenment to base our societies purely on concepts like secularism and liberalism. We've unwittingly then brought about generations that do not understand the moral foundations of their own societies. I was appalled last spring when I found students attending the highest educational institutions the West has to offer. This is the University of Harvard, the University of Penn, the University of Columbia, and it moved on to the University of Oxford and Cambridge. It's in these places where young people were openly supporting Hamas. That tells you that's a generation that is struggling with the effort to tell the difference between right and wrong. Now, for them, America is founded on, and then so is Britain and all these other countries, they borrowed, they established institutions that were inspired by Christianity and Christian morality in particular. And by rejecting Christianity, by debasing it, by mocking it, by kicking it out of the public space, I think we've deprived young people of their moral sources, and it's been a huge mistake. And we created a vacuum, and in that vacuum have come wokeism, social justice. You know, these are kids who really want to change the world and do good things. And that is, it's the progressives who are capitalizing on that. And when I say the progressives, I mean the woke in particular, because they've presented a new religion. And along, of course, with the Islamists, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the West. And that is because Christianity has been subdued, not by Muslims, but by Christians.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Ben. I've noticed an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, especially among conservatives and the far right. They like to point out that AIPAC owns our government, or that the state of Israel, the fact that we give them arms and support them so much in their wars against these terrible Arab states, that this means that we're being controlled by Jews. I just want to know, like, what's your general take on this? And is there a way to, like, stop this from happening, especially among the right?
To answer your question, let me illustrate it with my own. I was socialized into hating Jews. I used to hate them. I used to think they were monsters. I didn't think they looked human. So I was completely immersed. And this happened at home, and it happened in the mosque, and it happened at school, and so on. And then I came to the Netherlands. And fortunately for me, I attended the University of Leiden just as the Europeans were going through their reckoning of what they had done to their fellow Jewish citizens. And I thank that as my re-education. A few years later, when I went into parliament in 2003, there were groups of Muslims who said they didn't want to be a part of this education on the Holocaust, the memorialization of what happened, this reckoning. They said they weren't a part of it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And the mistake country after country made.
This is exactly what happens when Western societies abandon their principles for multiculturalism. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is describing how countries made Holocaust education optional to avoid offending Muslim students who didn't want to participate. We stopped teaching about the worst genocide in human history because some people found it inconvenient to their worldview. This isn't tolerance, it's civilizational collapse. When you prioritize hurt feelings over historical truth, you create exactly what we're seeing now. A generation that can't distinguish between victims and perpetrators, between democracy and terrorism. The students supporting Hamas on university campuses are the predictable result of decades of moral relativism disguised as inclusivity. Ayaan understands this because she lived it, escaped it, and now watches Western intellectuals voluntarily embrace the same ideological poison she fought to overcome. Let's continue watching.
Was to say, well, in that case, it's not mandatory anymore. I think in Germany, officially, it's still mandatory, but it's outsourced to NGOs. And with that, I think, came a rise in, I don't know if you remember, you are too young to remember this, but some of the older people here will remember the nasty campaign against the canon as Western canon as white, male, and pale and stale. And Jesse Jackson shouting all over the place, Western Civ must go, ho, ho, yo, ho, whatever, Western Civ must go. Now, I think a consequence of that has been that there is now a generation that doesn't know what led up to the Holocaust, that are not educated, that these tropes, this scapegoating, this story, that these stupid narratives that Jews control the world, they don't see, they can't look at it critically because they haven't been taught, they haven't been exposed. And that is the generation after me. I was going to school in the 1990s up to the 2000s, and this politicization of the curriculum and this capture of the curriculum by the woke, along with some of the Islamists, that is occurring in the 2010s up to now. And so I think we're now seeing a generation that's come off with degrees in funny subjects like gender studies and Black studies and liberation studies and intersectionality and so on. And they can't tell the difference between right and wrong. And they believe in this nonsense. And it's dangerous nonsense.
Should we assume that this is another trend, maybe, like BLM, and not wait until the mainstream forgets anti-Semitism, or should we see this as a more permanent thing, and how do we respond?
That's a great question. And let me start with how you end by saying, please do not think that this is another fad that will pass. I think it would be a lethal mistake for all of us to do it, and especially for Jewish communities. It's not going to pass, number one. Number two, I understand and I listen and follow intensely conversations within Jewish communities where they say, well, at least now, as opposed to the 1930s, we have a home and we can go to Israel. And I think that that is A, giving up, and B, if you look at the scale and the scope and the intensity of the hatred that the Islamists have created, and not just Islamists, it used to be Muslim governments. The only difference is Islamists drive their followers to act, whereas the Muslim governments propagated the anti-Jewish propaganda in order to create, to keep their populations apathetic. But the intensity, the scale, and the scope of this hatred is something that you cannot underestimate. And it has shifted, as I said, it's imported now. It's no longer constrained to the Muslim countries of the past. It's here in America, it's all over the West. And it has resuscitated and given permission to the other anti-Semitisms, the European anti-Semitism, but don't forget the Soviet anti-Semitism. It's given permission to all of these anti-Semitisms to come back. And so I think now is the moment. It's one of the most serious, if not the most serious, problems that we are seeing. If we want to prevent another Holocaust from happening, we should not treat this as a fad. We should take it very, very seriously.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask you was, you speak of Islamophobia and classes like Black Studies as phony ideological things, but I was curious as to what makes them different. What makes white supremacy different, or like Islamophobia so different from anti-Semitism, as there, we did import many African slaves that died in the millions, and so did South American countries even more so. We did force Native Americans on forced marches and genocide. There are Muslims being massacred in China today. So what makes anti-Semitism so different?
Two things. One is we have reckoned in America and in Western European countries, we've had a great reckoning with our past. We've addressed the fact that we engaged in slavery, we fought a war, we ended it. We had segregation, we had another major fight, we ended it. We had the civil rights movement. We brought women out of, and by the way, in fighting for all of those emancipations, the people who were heading these fights were constantly quoting from the Bible. They were believing Christians and they were inspired by their Christianity. So number one, we had that reckoning. Number two, anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred in humanity, and you find it, believe it or not, across the entire world. What made the West different after they nearly exterminated their Jews was to have that honest look in the mirror and reckon with what they did, and then those campaigns to end it. Islamophobia is a made-up word. It's made up by a political movement that wants to exploit and capitalize on white guilt to achieve its end goal, which is the revival of the caliphate. And the revival of the caliphate is to convert all of us into Islam, whether we like it or not. Those of us who refuse to do that, we will surely be beheaded. I'm sure I'm on top. And that is their end goal. And so they're exploiting these Western part of subversion. This is just a guest speech, but I wish that at some point someone here could start a lecture series on subversion, on active measures, on asymmetric warfare. That would get you interested in what it is that the Islamists are doing and how they've become so successful against these great nations with this incredible military and economic structures, and yet the Islamists are winning. Islam is spreading.
Is there room for compromise between principles?
If I want to kill you and behead you, unless you convert to the religion I dictate, what would be the place of compromise?
Well, I would not mind converting, as I myself am an agnostic, so have no faith, have no established faith. However, I understand that some people would not share that vision. So,
let's play with this thought for a while. There's a time and a place for everything, and for some of the people, say in places like Africa, we don't talk about this, but Islamists are active in Africa and violently so. If you're a Christian in Egypt or a Hindu in parts of Pakistan, and you have someone looking at you and saying, you'll either lose your head or you convert to Islam, it makes sense to consider converting to Islam. But here today, for us to have the attitude of, well, we'll see what happens, and if we get to that point, I'll just convert, I will say, are you sure? Maybe you want to get educated on what would happen once you convert. What would your life be like, and the life of your sisters and women? What would they do to the Jews? He has said, this man, I repeat it, he said they're bacteria and they're microbes. And in the video that I showed you, they made it very clear it has nothing to do with Palestine. It has everything to do with them being Jewish. So they are going to annihilate the Jews. Will you stand by and watch that? Maybe I should give Introduction to Islam and Islamism as a lecture series, and once you understand what it's all about, you might develop a backbone.
I would look forward to that greatly. Thank you very much.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali just delivered a masterclass in uncomfortable truths that most Western leaders are too cowardly to acknowledge. She's watching civilizations that gave her freedom systematically destroy themselves through misguided tolerance. When she says anti-Semitism isn't a passing fad, listen carefully. This is someone who escaped Islamic fundamentalism and recognizes the pattern. The student asking about compromise with people who want to behead you perfectly illustrates the problem. Western minds so detached from reality, they'll negotiate with their own executioners. Meanwhile, university students support Hamas while claiming moral authority. This isn't happening by accident. As Ayaan explains, it's the result of abandoning Christian moral foundations, making Holocaust education optional, and allowing ideological movements to capture education systems. The West is being conquered not by armies, but by ideas. And most people are too polite to notice. Subscribe if you want more hard truths about civilizational decline that mainstream media won't touch.